Lori here. I'm here today to do one of my top videos of the year that I do, one of my top 2 videos of the year that I do, but it looks back at my top 10 fantasy and science fiction stories that I wound up reading this year. I will admit I read mostly fantasy, but there was some sci-fi books that I did read, and that's what I call this list, fantasy and sci-fi. And then at the end, I'll give you my top read of the year, and then tomorrow I think you're going to see my top 10 other reads of the year because I notoriously read more fantasy um, and science fiction books than I do anything else. So I felt like all the other books just go into another list. But enough of the explanation. So let's get into it. I don't really rank these because I feel like it's super hard to rank books, but I will give you my top read of the year at the end out of this list. So the first book that really impressed me this year was Where Dreams Descend by Janelle Angelis. This is it is a Phantom of the Opera meets like carnival like adventure. It's basically it follows a young girl and she's a magician and she winds up getting sent somewhere else to be a magician, but women can't be magician, and it was just a topsy-turvy, fantastical, magical ride. I really like the characters. It screamed like it screamed like the Caraval series to me. I'm a theater teacher and I love books that kind of use theater as a backdrop. But she had really, really strong characters, and it was just a really captivating story. One that I'm definitely excited to read the sequel. I think she really took all the elements of the story and kind of put them together. I was captivated by the romance. I thought the magic system was super easy to follow and super easy to understand. And the characters I really like. So at the end of the day, this was definitely one of my favorite reads of the year. And I'm definitely excited to read the sequel. I might actually try to get this as an audiobook and re-listen to it earlier when that book comes out. But overall, it was just a book that, as a theater teacher, I always find books that kind of have a theater connection to kind of pass on to my students. And this is one that I'm definitely want to pass on to them when I'm able to. So definitely was a fun read. Definitely was a fast-paced one. I got this in Owl Crate, but I also met her at ALA, I think. And again, it was just a really, really fun read, and I really am excited for the sequel. So the next book on my top reads of the year list is another Owl Crate pick. Owl Crate has had some very good books this year, and I still need to read the rest of them, but the other one is All the Stars and Teeth by Adeline Grace. I have really wanted to get more into some mermaid reads in the last couple of years. I read Trisha Levassara's The Pirate King duology, and I liked it. I thought it was interesting. This book was another fun read that was just fun. Like, I read this during COVID, the early start of COVID, and it was just a fun adventure story, and I really like the main character. I love books that have a found bunch of heroes that team up together. So the way it says princess, pirate, stowaway, mermaid, the crew makes the queen. But this one you follow a girl named Amora, and she is set to become the princess or the queen of this realm. But when her powers are not revealed the way she thinks she is, she has to go on an adventure to kind of rectify that. I love the team of people that she put together. I love the water setting. I love the pirating. I thought it was so fun, so captivating, such a strong character, and that immediately captured me, and I just love the setting. It was another book that was so easy to fly through, and I think she did a really good job with the world building as well. I've said this a lot of times. Sometimes in starter fantasy books, it's a lot to take in, and sometimes you need a lot more description than the author gives you. But for this book, I felt like it was really, really well done, and I really felt the characters. And again, the romance was one that I really did like, and I'm definitely excited for this sequel as well. I actually have an early arc of it, so it's possible I'll get to it a little bit earlier. But yeah, another book on my list that was one that just definitely was one that captivated me. I really liked the characters. I thought the world building was great, and I thought it was very, very unique. So definitely check that one out. And then the next book on this list is not a book I have in person anymore, but that is A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Kimmerer. I will admit, sometimes when I read sequels, I am let down. They always say that there's the second book slump. This book, however, I really liked. I like what Bridget Kimmerer did with the overall Beauty and the Beast Smith, because normally when you have companion books in a series, the first story sort of ends and then you kind of move on to the new story. That's not what Bridget Kimmerer did here. She really expanded the Beast myth into the second book, and it really captivated me. I also loved being in Gray's head. I loved meeting Lila. I loved floating back and seeing what the other two characters were up to, but still having them such a main part of this story. And it was definitely a book that captivated me. I still really liked the world that was created. I really liked the characters. But the highlight of this book for me was seeing Gray develop, because Gray was definitely one of my favorites in the first book, but I just really liked it. I was immediately captured. I was so intrigued by the development of um the prince in the first book, the beast, I guess you could say, like his develop. Did not expect the book to go that direction. I will say that it was definitely a pleasant surprise. I need a vow so bold and deadly, and I'm getting that early December. I'm actually gonna early January. I'm gonna actually pre-order it today. But I am so excited for that book, and I will definitely be reading that. That will definitely be one of my first reads in 2021 because I am super excited for it. But it was a sequel that I've read and I loved, and I read it quickly, and that's what I hope I do with more sequels in 2021 because it definitely impressed me enough and was not a letdown in any way. So I'm really excited for the characters. I'm really excited to see what happens to them because this is definitely one of my favorite Beauty and the Beast retellings that I've read, and I can't wait to see what happens to these characters in book 3. COVID was a bizarre year, but I did wind up finishing one of my series that I really wanted to finish. So Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassie Clare totally has to make this list because I love this conclusion. It took me like 2 years to finish Lord of Shadows because it took me so long to listen to it. But by the time I actually got to Queen of Air and Darkness, I was so captivated. I read it in like a week. I love this book. I won't say the Blackthorn children have beat out my first trio because, I mean, my first bunch of characters like Simon and Izzy and that bunch. But I will admit, I was definitely captivated to keep reading. I like the new world. I do like the Blackthorn children. Kit and Ty are probably some of my favorites. I'm dying for the Wicked Powers series. But I love how this book kind of concluded and kind of wrapped up their journeys and their adventures. I love how every book there's a problem that seems insurmountable, and Cassie Clare always does a really good job at solving it. I liked in this series that we did get to see the characters from the previous series. But I also just liked how she ended it. I thought it was a really fast-paced story, but one that was so well developed and so well told. And this one definitely got 5 stars for me. It's not a big shock that I really liked it. And then I quickly wound up finishing the rest of the series. But this is definitely, or the canon that's out by Cassie Clare. But I just really liked it. It reminded me a little bit of like the first gang of Shadowhunters that I met and fell in love with. But it definitely killed my emotions a little bit. There was a few parts in this book and the previous book that definitely kicked me in the emotions. And it was definitely a book that made me say, oh, we're here. So I really liked it. And I'm happy to put it on this list. Another surprise, but it really has stood up. And I just thank the impressive marketing at ALA and the tagline, "Can their love of books and pop music save the world?" This is, other than Illuminae, this I think is the only sci-fi science fiction book I read other than the Star Wars one I read. But this one, it was again just such a unique concept. But you basically follow this girl named Ellie Baker, and she lives in New York City, and it's being taken over by aliens. And the only thing she can do is, because they really don't want her reading, so she creates like a little lending library to kind of give to people so they can keep reading and keep connected to their culture, and just life books are really important to people. And when one of the aliens finds her, it goes in a very unexpected direction, and he really loves pop music, and they kind of have a connection. And I don't know if this book is getting a sequel, but I really hope it does. I was so captivated by this book. I really liked it. I definitely would call this science fiction light. So if you're struggling getting to science fiction, I think that this would be a great one. I thought the Romance was super unique, I'll say that. I reminded me a little bit of the Heart of Iron series by Ashley Poston, but that series is definitely more non-fantasy light. I mean, not science fiction light, it's definitely high science fiction. But this was just great. I thought it dealt a lot with like, you know, finding something that matters to you, and it was the perfect time to read it because of COVID and everything we were dealing with. But it was just like such a comfort read. I mean, there was a lot of stuff happening, but I just really liked Morris as a character. I thought he was such like a cinnamon roll, and I really hope this book gets a sequel. I'm gonna have to look that up. If anyone knows, comment below. But this is definitely one that made me, and I haven't heard a whole lot of people talk about it, but it's definitely a book that like I feel like you guys should read. So definitely check this one out. Sound of Stars by Alicia Dow. This cover is pretty, the tagline is pretty, and it was just a really great read. Definitely one of my favorite science fiction reads of the year by far. Next book I'm going to chat about is another finale in a series. So I guess I did better than I thought reading finales. But that is Five Dark Fates by Kendra Blake. I went into this book super hesitant because I was so afraid it was going to end in a bad way for some of my favorites. But I was like pleasantly surprised how it ended. It's a very like bloodthirsty read. It's basically like Game of Thrones. If you haven't heard of Three Dark Crowns, I don't know what you've been doing with your life, but it basically follows these three triplets as they compete to realize who's the final ruler. They all have different magical affinities. And it was a battle. Like I really liked it. I liked what she did. I always say, I said this from the first book, I like when the triplets work together. It was just one that really tugged at my heart, tugged at my emotions. It kind of fell into some of my favorite tropes. I won't give them away because it's going to spoil the ending of the book. But again, I really like Kendra Blake's writing. I think she writes eerie and creepy, but also bloodthirsty really well. It's definitely a series that I really do want to add to like my reread queue because now that I read them close together, I think I will get it will be a little bit more impactful. Jules is still one of my favorite characters by far. I just like the magic system. I have to go back and read her backlist. There are a couple books on, like, I want to read Anna Dressed in Blood. I want to read that series. I want to read a couple of her other series. So definitely have to investigate a few more of hers in 2021. I'll probably add her to my authors to read a little bit more from. But yeah, definitely one that I really liked and was so happy that I finally got around to reading it. And is not going to be a shock to anyone because I love this trope so much, but The Princess Will Save You by Sarah Hennon took the cake this year because I adored this book so much. It was mostly due to the trope that was featured, but boy, was I totally here for this read. The trope in this video because it's literally in the back cover, but basically there's a princess. She's being forced into an arranged marriage that she doesn't really want to be a part of. And the young man she's going to marry decides the only way to get her to marry is to kidnap her best friend who she happens to be in love with. And this princess decides the only way to protect him is to save him. She goes on an adventure to save him. And this book was a pure adventure. The Princess Will Save You is totally the title of this book. I loved it. It was great. I love that her love interest was literally being protected. I thought the end was so shocking and so surprising. Another book I'm definitely pre-ordering for 2021 because I need to know what happens. I loved it. I thought it was great from start to end. It did that trope so well. And as someone who normally falls for the wrong romance, I was really happy that Sarah Hennon felt me and like wrote a book purely for me. Okay, she didn't write purely for me, but I felt like the romance was for me because I always get burned in my romance loves. I always love the wrong character. My friend Justin always tells me I have terrible taste in romances because I always pick the character that the girl's not going to choose. It's a sad state of affairs in my life. But I really like this one. I love the world building. I love how she was kind of adventuring to save him. And it was just a kick-butt girl romance. Kick-butt girl book. I mean, just a book in general. But I liked how strong and determined and how she used her free will to really, like, tackle it. I really liked it. So this is definitely why this book made my list. And I'm definitely reading the sequel in 2021. If 2021 leaves and I have not read this book, you have permission to shame me in the comments. So, do that. The next book I'm going to talk about is definitely one that's in that higher echelon, but this is Chain of Gold by Cassie Clare. I have no idea what happened to my copy. Somewhere in my bedroom, but cannot find it. So, here's a pretty picture. I still stand by the fact that my original gang of those Shadowhunter heroes from that first series, Simon and that gang, is still my favorite. But I have to admit, this second gang is really stepping up its game so much that I'm really enjoying it. Like, this is the book that follows Tess, Will, and their kids. And I have to admit, I'm really intrigued. I really like these characters. I don't know if it's because I've been getting into reading Regency romances this year, and this is kind of the time period that we're kind of seeing, but I'm just captivated. Some of these characters are just so cinnamon rolly, and I really like it. I think it's great. I love them all. I'm definitely going to have to look into getting a book box for one of these. It might be a Lumicrate, it might be Fairy Loot. But I definitely really love this. I'm not as insane as some other, not insane, but some is diehard fan as like some people that buy every single edition. But I'm really happy that I caught up. I'm really happy that I'm like back in this fandom because I feel like it's what I needed this year because it was just such a fun book. I really loved it. The character growth was great. The world building, just everything was just so well done, and so many romances that I'm captivated with and really enjoying. There's a lot of different types of romance. There's some LGBTQ representation, which I think is so important, but especially in this time period where it's super frowned upon. You have some good guys, you have some bad guys, and it's just a book that I need. Chain of Iron, like now. So that's definitely going to be a book that I'm going to be reading when it comes out. But definitely one of my top reads of the year. This will probably make the top of this list at the very end, but totally one that I loved, and so happy that I finally got around to catching up on this series so I could read it because I am in love with it. The next book I'm going to chat about is one that got me through election season. That's saying something. And that is the book that has taken BookTube by storm. How to get it, how to read it, and that is House on the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Kuhn. This summary has been everywhere, but I'll give you guys a recap in case you haven't heard about this. But it basically follows this person who works at like an agency that helps make sure that magical kids are being taken care of in their foster homes. And this young man winds up has to go check on like one of the most dangerous houses, and he winds up coming into connection with these kids and this young man, and it just transforms him life. I am such a sucker for books about found family. I'm such a sucker for books about finding your own place home. I'm such a book about like kids, any kid books I'm totally here for. This checks so many boxes for me. I remember crying on the train as I was reading it. It was just like a warm hug. Like, that's the best way I could describe it. Like, it was very emotional. Just very, very sweet. I felt like there was just some characters that just like you just wanted to hug them. Like, there was one kid who looked like a little like blob. That's what he looked like. He was like just jelly, and his only dream was to be a bellhop. That's his only dream, was to be a bellhop. This was the only thing he wanted to do, and I just found their desires so simple. And then you have like a literal prince of hell, and it was just a great read. I would definitely recommend it if you're having a rough day. Pick this book up because it definitely will put a smile on your face. And I am really excited to check out his next book. I know he has written like a lot. Like, I have Extraordinaries on my TBR. And he does have a sequel coming out in 2021. I'm going to definitely add to my TBR a little bit quickly. But definitely one that definitely put a smile on my face, and I was really happy to tackle. So this is supposed to be a top 10 reads of the year, but I kind of have to add another one because I feel like I still need to talk about it. But the next book on this list is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. Another book that has been taking the BookTube world by storm. Again, this was another one of my election season reads, and it really made like an impression in me. But it basically follows this young man named Yadriel. He is a trans main character, and his only desire is to be a brujo with his family. But his family is having a little bit of a harder time accepting that he is trans and kind of having a hard time dealing with that. So he takes it upon himself to prove to his family that he is a brujo with his cousin by his side. And he accidentally, when his cousin actually dies, he's thinking he can like summon his cousin and find out what happened to his cousin But he winds up summoning someone else, and let's just say things don't go according to plan. Um, it's a romance, it's family, there's a mystery at the heart of it, which I did not predict at all. But at the heart of it is this young trans boy who just is amazing. And I loved getting into his head. I loved seeing his family background. Like the Brujo Society was so unique. It was great. And I really like the romance. He has a second book coming out in 2021 that I'm definitely going to be pre-ordering. But yeah, this was great. It was a perfect Halloween read. Like, if you would need something next Halloween or you don't want to wait that long, you just want to read it anytime, great. A little bit eerie, a little bit creepy, has witches, has brujos, but the romance was one that definitely captivated me. And as someone that normally sees twists in fantasy novels coming, I did not see the ending in this book coming, so definitely check it out. And the last book I'm going to chat about in this video is another witchy themed novel, but that is The Bone Crier's Moon by Catherine Purdy. This is another Owl Crate book. I think I had like 4 Owl Crate books on this list, which just shows me that they do pick really good books, and I need to get around to reading more of them in my life. So, but this one follows a girl named, what's her name? Elisa, and she has basically been preparing to take on the mantle of her clan. Yeah, she become the man. So, but their world is a little bit complicated. I will be honest. I don't want to get too much into it, but you have 3 different point of views, and when you're fated to someone, you have to kill them, and Bastion winds up coming to be connected to them. I really like the world. It was captivating. Like that, we have 3 main characters. Definitely excited for the sequel. But this one was it was a little bit more complicated world building, I will say that. But it was one that, like, captivated me enough to keep reading, and I definitely need the sequel. So, yeah, guys, those are, like, the 11 books that stood out to me in the fantasy and science fiction genre this year. Let me know in the comments what are some of your top science fiction and fantasy reads for the year 2020. It's been a weird year. It's been a weird year. We all know that. But we can all admit we got some great books this year. So I will talk to you guys for my next video. But before I go, I just want to like distill it down to one book. If I had to choose one book that is at the top of my read list this year, it was definitely Chain of Gold by Cassie Clare. Definitely. With Queen of Air and Darkness a close second, but Cassie Clare was definitely the author of my year because I read a lot by her this year, but Chain of Gold definitely took the cake out of my top reads of the year by far. So, hope you guys are staying safe and being well. Hope you guys like this list. Add yours in the comments and we will chat about it. And I'll talk to you guys later or tomorrow for another video. Bye, guys.